A great game with a scary ending, a couple surprising roster moves. We have a ton to discuss on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. It was a banner day for the New York Mets. A lot happened. You had Brett Baty and Christian Scott getting optioned down to AAA. You had Omar Narvaez getting DFA'd and a trade with the Yankees to get a new backup catcher. And all of that took place prior to a game where the Mets narrowly escaped with a 10-9 victory. It was a fantastic game for, 8 innings, I guess. And then top of the ninth, it almost turned into everyone's worst nightmare. But luckily, New Leaf Mets, I think that's what I might be calling them. They've turned a new leaf after that players' meeting. They got the victory. So we'll talk about the roster moves in the next segment, but I want to focus on the game to open things up here because I do believe this might be a new Leaf Mets. This might be a team that has turned a corner because, for one, they've won 2 games in a row. Can't say that or haven't been able to say that in a while. Also, though, there's been moments where the Mets have been losing games that they're starting to win them. And I do want to note JD Martinez. I didn't watch his press conference, his media availability from Thursday night's game until after I did the show. And I wish I did on Thursday night because he said a lot of really interesting things. He talked about how the Mets have been in all these games, which is true, and how everyone thinks that they're the worst team in baseball. And all right, that means there's no pressure on them. So maybe that allows the Mets to be free, to be more loose out there. Maybe that's part of the whole new celebration that's going on. I don't know exactly what it means. I hope I never know. I want that to stay in the clubhouse because it's working. And when those things get out, it seems that they lose some of their magic. So I hope everyone's tight-lipped on whatever the swing in the hand under. I would do it. I would do it. You've seen it. If you watch the games, you've been seeing it. I did a couple mock ones before I started on camera, and it just looks stupid. Also, I'll explain those in a minute. A couple Band-Aids on my hand. Had a rough night. But getting to Martinez's comments, he said that across his career, and this guy's been around for a long time, he said it was the best players meeting he's been a part of, the one where he's left with the best feeling. Like, this team is closer than you think. And, we'll see if it holds up. But the last 2 games are games the Mets have been losing. To come back the way they did on Thursday, and then on Friday to start the game trailing 3-0 because Severino gives up, 3 hits and he hits a batter in that first inning. Previous Mets of May would have just crawled into a shell, and all of a sudden they would have just got mowed down by Jordan Montgomery. They wouldn't have put up any fight, and they would have lost 3-1, or maybe it would have been 7-1, but they wouldn't have scored any runs. Well, here's the New Leaf Mets who come out. Lindor, great at bat, draws a walk. He is red hot right now. Pete Alonso flies out. Then Brandon Nimmo rips a double down the first base line. That puts 2 runners in scoring position. JD Martinez draws a walk to load the bases. And here comes Starling Marte. And in the past, rest of May Mets would have hit into a double play ball right there, inning over. No. Starling Marte splits the outfielders, gets one into left center that rolls to the wall. It's a bases clearing triple, new ball game. Then Mark Vientos, if that was Brett Baty batting, maybe he strikes out. But it's Mark Vientos, and he gets bat on ball, pretty much a swinging bunt. It works out for the Mets. Eugenio Suarez can't field it. Run scores, Vientos safe at first. Mets have a 4-3 lead when Severino steps on the mound in the second inning. He goes 1-2-3 that inning, and the Mets give him another run in the bottom of the second. Tomas Nido doubles, and I showed my hands on YouTube. I'll show them again. I could show you my arm too. Maybe I shouldn't. It's pretty nasty. That's when I fell. I was running, and I don't know if any of you are joggers. Maybe some of you are listening. And if you are listening, focus on where you are running. If you are listening to this show while you are going on a Saturday morning jog, I urge you to pay attention to where you're stepping, because I did the inverse of my typical run. So I ran the other way, and I guess a part of the sidewalk that I typically run down where there's a big lip, I had to run up and my toe caught it. I Superman flew. My hands smashed against the pavement. My elbow did. Luckily, my watch didn't break, but it got scratched up. Phone. It was a yard sale with me all over the place. And then I put the earbuds back in, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? Lindor just stole third. I went back. He doubled. So he doubles in Nito. He steals third. The Mets couldn't get him in, so I'm already frustrated from falling. And come on. You got a guy on third base, nobody out. You can't bring him in. But ultimately, that run did not matter for the Mets. It came close to mattering, but it didn't. Top of the third, Luis Severino gives up a run. It was unearned. There was a catcher's interference in that inning. There was 2 double play balls that should have been turned that weren't. Jose Iglesias made some bad throws. He's supposed to be a good defender. I'm sure we'll see more of it. I do not get as mad at Jose Iglesias as I used to at Joey Wendell. We'll talk about him a little more in the next segment as it relates to Brett Baty. But all of a sudden, it's 5-4, but the Mets got that 1 run back and then some in the bottom of the 4th inning. Tomas Nido leadoff walk. Lindor strikes out, but then Pete Alonso doubles home Nido. Nimmo strikes out. JD Martinez reaches on an error, and then you get 2 out RBI hits from Starling Marte and Mark Vientos. 3 runs come across in the inning. The Mets are up 8-4. Top of the 6th, Luis Severino gives up a solo home run. That was the only extra base hit he allowed in this game. Look at the final line. You see he goes 5 1/3. He gives up 5 runs, 4 of them earned off 6 hits. Doesn't look like the best game, but honestly, a lot of those hits were singles. I don't look at this start and suddenly sell any of my stock on Severino. I think he's going to be fine. Was it his best outing? Of course not, but not horrible. Although, of course, only pitching into the 6th and not getting through it. You want more out of Sevy, but again, I'm not out on him in any way. I am all the way in on Daniel Nunez, though, because he comes on after the home run, strikes out the 2 batters he faced. See him touch a 98, see a nasty slider. This is a guy right now. Funny enough, I look at this bullpen, and is it a outrageous take to say Daniel Nunez has the best stuff in the Mets bullpen right now? Just pure stuff. I mean, Garrett's got a lot of pitches too, but man, Nunez, I am really impressed with, and I want to see him in leverage, but you're not going to just take a guy who finally just got added back to the roster and thrust him into those situations right away. So love what I saw out of him, and the Mets got that 1 run right back. Brandon Nimmo singles, JD Martinez 2-run homer, and an impressive homer. Pitch outside that he goes out and gets, covers it, 105 off the bat, hits it to the opposite field. Really great stuff. JD Martinez starting to come around. He can really drive winning for the Mets. Okay, this is why we love the signing when it happened. Now that the Mets are maybe turning the corner, he could be a big reason why they go on a run and maybe you win 5 games in a row or 7 games in a row. And then you get yourself out of the hole that you dug. So really loved what I saw from the offense in this game. And you're sitting there 10-5. You think, all right, what do you got to do? You just got to get some outs here from the bullpen. What, 9 more outs? It can't be that difficult. Jake Diekman works a 1-2-3 7th. Sean Reed Foley works around a walk in the 8th. Then 9th inning, they go back to Foley. Gets the first out, then gives up a single and a walk. Here comes closer Reed Garrett. Do we call him closer Reed Garrett yet? Maybe not after tonight. He gets a ground out, so you're 1 out away. First pitch to Jock Peterson is a cuddle. Jeez. Cuddle. I'm leaving that one in the show. A cutter right down the middle. Peterson crushes it, 3-run homer. Now it's 10-8. Now you're worried. Okay. Christian Walker then homers on the first pitch, a fastball in the next batter. 10-9. Now everyone is ready to turn off this game and throw their remote through the TV. But luckily, Garrett was able to get the big strikeout to end the game. Mets of old lose that one 11-10, and or it goes to extra innings and then they lose it 14-10. Whatever it would have been, at least this Mets team scored enough that they were able to avoid the meltdown, and they take the game, and now they're 1 win away from taking the series. And that bullpen, very taxed for Arizona. They're sitting in the driver's seat of this series. Go out and win a 4-game set. Heck, maybe you sweep one and you really build some momentum. But I really enjoyed watching this game, seeing the way this team's competing, seeing how they're playing for each other, particularly offensively. The new celebration. It feels good to watch the Mets play some good baseball, and hopefully that can continue. But they also are trotting out a much different roster. So I'm going to go through all the different roster moves. Brett Baty, Christian Scott, Omar Narvaez. We'll talk about everything in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA with the NBA Finals, the NHL playoffs, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You could also bet on same-game parlays. So if you're watching the Mets on Saturday, you want to bet Sean Manaea as strikeouts, take the over. Maybe you like JD Martinez to hit the over on hits. Combine that with the Mets winning, keeping this streak rolling, and you can win big. And again, remember, you place that $5 money line bet. You win that. Actually, any bet. It could be any bet for $5. If you win that, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today was a big day for the Locked On Mets insiders because there was a lot of news to discuss between Baty, Christian Scott, Omar Narvaez. I was sending texts throughout the day breaking down my opinions on each of the moves, why the Mets did it, why it made sense, and went back and forth with a lot of you. Also, a conversation with a texter that really it was at the forefront of my mind watching the game tonight. We were talking about how tight the game was on Thursday, and I said I would kill for the Mets to just win a game 10-3. And when they were sitting there and they scored the 4 runs in the first inning, they're sitting at 4-3. I had that thought, wouldn't it be crazy if the Mets scored 10 runs and they win 10-3? And then I was like, all right, I'll take 10-5. That's close enough. Mets can't win that way, can they? But if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, be part of our texting service, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, let's go through the moves. Brett Baty for Jose Iglesias. We've only been talking about this one for 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, this has been in the cards for a while. It didn't make sense to have Brett Baty and Mark Vientos continue to be on the roster together. Mark Vientos has earned the starting third base job, and it's his for the taking now. If he keeps hitting and JD Martinez is hitting and the Mets end up being, if not buyers, just non-sellers at the deadline, it might be a long time before Brett Baty can come back. Now, they still believe in Brett Baty. David Stern said on a podcast today that they still think that Christian Scott and Brett Baty, or I didn't even say he thinks, he says that we know Christian Scott and Brett Baty will play big roles on this team this year. So I'm not saying he's, casted off to Siberia here. But what I am saying is Mark Vientos is the starting third baseman, and Brett Baty is going to have to do a lot in AAA, and there's going to have to be some glaring holes with Vientos defensively for Baty to take that job. This is the best shot that the best shot that Mark Vientos has had to stick at the big league level and get regular playing time in his entire career. And I'm thrilled for him because he's been showing up. He's been doing exactly what you asked. He's playing solid enough defense. It's not like he's Brett Baty over there because Baty really shined with the glove, but he's serviceable. And offensively, he's cut down the strikeouts since coming back. He's driving the baseball with authority at times. I just really appreciate the at-bats that he's given the Mets. I think that alone is an upgrade. Having Vientos without anyone to look over his shoulder at in the lineup every day, that's going to help this team. Now, Iglesias is a nice add. I think he's a really good clubhouse guy. You saw that when he spoke with the media. He talked about how much it meant to him to get this call. He described it something similar to his first call. He said this one was more special because when you are a 34-year-old who had a nice career but has not played in the big leagues for a full season, didn't play last year, played in the minors, but did not get back to the show. Last played with the Rockies in 2022. Some doubts creep in. You wonder if you can still get up to the big leagues. And he didn't give up on it. He didn't just say, all right, I had a nice career. I'm a 279 career hitter. I'll just hang out with the family and fold up shop. He wanted to keep playing. There was some concerns about his bat speed. He worked on it, had a pretty good season in AAA so far, was hitting 273, 309 on base, 442 slug, had 7 home runs in 42 games, had a good camp in spring to give you a good first impression of him. There was some that thought he might make camp or make the team out of camp. And quite frankly, he probably should have over Joey Wendell, but Joey Wendell had the guaranteed contract, so he got the first opportunity at it. Now it's Iglesias' job, and I think he's very fit to play that job, which is going to be sparing Jeff McNeil, like we saw him do tonight. I wonder if they're going to do 2 starts in a row with another lefty going on Saturday. I'd imagine not. I would think Jeff's going to get back in there, but he's going to be able to take maybe a start a week from McNeil. He's going to play some defense for Mark Vientos at the end of close games, I'd imagine. But overall, he's going to have a limited role, and that's the type of guy you want in a limited role. A guy who's got a long career, who knows how to prepare himself, and can come off the bench, make an impact, and be a good guy in that clubhouse. And I think he's just checked all of those boxes. So that was the most obvious move that the Mets had to make. And I'm glad they finally did it. Now we get to the more surprising moves, and we're going to spend the next segment focusing more on Christian Scott, because that was the stunner, but then the more you think about it, it really wasn't. Omar Narvaez getting DFA'd, though. I don't think anyone had that coming right now. We had it coming in 2 weeks whenever Francisco Alvarez is good to return. But we didn't think that the Mets were going to make a trade with the Yankees for Luis Torrens, and we definitely didn't believe that Narvaez was going to be cast aside, but performance dictated this. Omar Narvaez was the worst player in the Mets this year, and quite frankly, it wasn't close. Wins above replacement from Fangraphs tells us how valuable a player is. Omar Narvaez was at a minus 0.8, and this is not a statistic like WRC plus or OPS plus that is just an average, right? Where sample size doesn't matter. This is accumulation stat. So to accumulate minus 0.8 F4 in the amount of playing time that he had is truly, truly bad baseball. He was killing them with the running game. He just wasn't particularly good behind the plate whatsoever. He batted 154 with a 191 on base and a 185 slug. Thank you for the walk-off hit, but this was a move the Mets had to make to get better. And yes, it might only be for 2 weeks, but Luis Torrens was hitting 279 in AAA with a 339 on base, 468 slug, 5 home runs. That was in 30 games. Scranton and Syracuse play each other a lot, so I'm sure the Mets have gotten a ton of eyes on him. And basically, he had an opt-out of his contract. So the Yankees had until June 15th to make a move and trade him and to send him to a destination. They swing a deal. They get $100,000 out of it from the Mets. And honestly, what will probably happen, he'll play 3 or 4 games with the Mets. Narvaez will be good to go. And then they will DFA Torrens and they'll send him somewhere else and they'll get some cash out of it. So it's one of those moves where you say, why did they do it? It doesn't make sense. They didn't need to go that far. Why cast Narvaez and his contract aside? Well, he's been really bad. And Torrens does make this team better for the next couple of weeks. And I don't want to put this out there, so let me knock on wood and cross everything. But if Francisco Alvarez has a setback, you're going to be really happy they made this move. Tomas Nido has done a nice job as the starting catcher in Alvarez's absence. He's had, some really big moments this week in particular. I think he's the perfect backup for the rest of the season. I think he has won that job. But for now, this gives you a better guy to spare him until Alvarez comes back. So I think that was a smart move by this front office. Front offices in the past, they would have just said, all right, well, we're paying Narvaez. Let's keep paying him. This is, all right, we can get marginally better. Let's take that opportunity. And if Torrens has a 3-hit game over the next 2 weeks and wins the Mets one, it was worth $100,000. Okay. When it's Steve Cohen's pocketbook and when you probably get a lot of it back when you trade him anyway with another team, if another team claims him, no brainer. So really like that move. Now, the Christian Scott move. I love that Daniel Nunez is going to be up at this bullpen. And I think he's going to play a nice role. And I'm excited to see him get some run here without a 6-man rotation blocking the Mets, making them have to continue to cycle guys. Nunez might get a little more of an extended look than he has been getting. I think that's really good for this team. But why did the Mets decide to demote Christian Scott? I'll talk about that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And today, Darryl Strawberry will get his number 18 retired by the New York Mets. I was there for Keith Hernandez's jersey retirement. It is an awesome event to just be in the building, to feel the energy when history is made like that. And you can find tickets. I just checked for as low as $5 on Game Time. That's just to get in the door. You can find, of course, better seats across the ballpark. You can take a view of your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect before you arrive. All in prices up front, so there's no hidden fees. You know exactly what you're going to spend. 2 taps, you're all set. You can buy your tickets in less than a minute. So if you want to go there for Darryl Strawberry's jersey retirement, or on Sunday, they got the Darryl Strawberry bobblehead giveaway. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The NHL playoffs continue and the NBA finals are just around the corner. If you want to be up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Now, when the Christian Scott news came over, I think a lot of people were shocked and not happy. Why are the Mets demoting? One of the few reasons I'm tuning in to watch games. And I shared a similar sentiment, even more so. My dad and I are going to be in DC for this upcoming series to start next week. And we were pretty much setting our plans. We're going to actually get our tickets on Game Time. We're saying we're going to wait and see when he's announced which game is he going to start. And that is one that we will be going to. We thought it would be Wednesday. Now he gets optioned down. I was upset about that. But the more I took a minute to step back and think about why the Mets did this, it actually makes a ton of sense. So Christian Scott made 5 starts in the big league so far. 27 and 2/3 innings pitched, 25 strikeouts, ERA under 4. He's looked really good. Now he threw 25 and a third in AAA. So he's up to 53 innings on the season. Why does that matter? I know fans aren't going to like to hear it, but this guy's going to have an innings limit. Last year, he threw 87 and 2/3 innings. They don't usually jump guys more than 30 innings a season. So I'd say this year you're looking at maybe 120, maybe 130 innings pitched is probably what he's got to give. Now, because there are a lot of off days coming up with the London series, you really don't need a 6-man rotation. The Mets can just start Luis Severino on regular rest on Wednesday, and they're good. Or if they want to keep Severino for the London series, you call up Joey Lucchesi to make a spot start, or Jose Budo, and you send the guy back down, and you roll from there. Or maybe it's Adrian Hauser in a bullpen game. With 2 days off, you could go that route. The Mets have some decisions to make with that Wednesday game. But what this does for them is it gives them a chance to put a pause on Christian Scott, which is important if you want him to pitch in August. And seriously, in August, because if he's averaging about 25 innings a month and he's sitting at 53 right now, if he threw 25 in June, 25 in July, he's at 103 innings pitched. Granted, I said 120, so he probably would pitch in August, but he's definitely not pitching in September. Now you might afford him the ability to do that. And here's where things get sort of interesting. The Mets said he's going to be back in short order. So one way to do that, pretty simple. You just shut him down. You shut him down. You have him throw his bullpens. Teams aren't as concerned with bullpens where you're not facing hitters. It's that game action that they're a little more worried about with the innings limits. So you just shut him down. And he can join the rotation as soon as his 15-day option period ends. So June 15th, he can make a start coming out after that London series and first couple games back there. And you roll again with the 6-man rotation. But I have a sneaking suspicion that this might be a little bit longer than that. They're saying right now it's just a short stint and he's going to be right back. And I hope it is. But at the same time, in some respects, I hope it's not if you want to see him pitch deeper into this season. If you keep him out of the rotation in June, here's what the Mets have in front of them, right? They play, the rest of this series against the Diamondbacks, 3 in DC, 2 days off, 2 games in London, 1 day off after London. So those guys are going to be well rested. You then have 9 straight games after the London series. So I think it's a 6-game homestand and then 3 games on the road. Then you have another off day. Then you have the Yankees for 2, then an off day. Then you're going to start a pair where you play 17 games in 17 days before the All-Star break. So that's where you're going to need a 6-man rotation. But that basically brings us to July, that 17-game, 17-day stretch. You started Christian Scott on Thursday. You can shut him down for a week, maybe even 2 weeks. Pitch him minimally in the minor leagues just to keep him sharp. And let's just say he returns to the rotation on July 2nd. And he's only thrown 6 innings during that time with bullpens mixed in. Now, instead of throwing 22, 23 innings because he's averaging about 5 2/3 a start, instead of throwing that in 4 June starts, he throws 6 innings. Now you've saved 16 innings. That can be 3 starts potentially at the end of the season that you can add on for him. And he would have 3 starts if he started on July 2nd in that 17-game stretch. So you'd make 3 starts, you'd have the All-Star break, and then let's just say through 17 innings in those 3 starts, right? Now he's sitting at around 75 innings pitched at the break. There'd be 67 games left in the season. If you have a 6-man rotation, that would be 11 more turns for Christian Scott. Again, with what he's averaging, 5 2/3, looking at maybe 62 more innings to get through the entire year. That would be 137 innings pitched. So by not having him pitch in June, you could have him in September. Now, I don't see a world where, for one, the Mets get all the way back into relevance. They're a playoff team, and you have to worry about October. Let's sort of take that out of the cards. But I would love to see Christian Scott stay in the rotation all the way through and feel the entire sort of pace and rhythm of a big league season where he gets to 130 innings pitched. Maybe he's shut down with a week left in the season or 2 weeks left. But he really got to go the full way through. You have a nice offseason, and maybe next year, instead of having 130 innings pitched, maybe the leash is taken off him. Maybe he can go up to 160, 170, and you might have him available in the playoffs. They really have to think about these things a lot when it comes to their prize pitching prospect. And so considering the fact that across June, 30 days in June, they have 24 games. They have 6 off days. You really don't need a 5-man rotation in June. You just don't. Or excuse me, you need a 5-man rotation. You really don't need a 6-man rotation in June. So I understand it. Now, again, they could just bring him back on July 15th. And even that resets him a little bit if you shut him down for 2 weeks, essentially. But why they said it's just going to be in short order, I have a feeling that we might not see Christian Scott this month. Because you also could always go, like, let's just say in that 9-game stretch, you wanted a guy, you could always go to Jose Budo. Like, you still have that option. Jose Budo is pitching really well in AAA. And I kind of hope he does make a spot start on Wednesday. That would be great because I'd rather see that than Hauser in a bullpen game. If it's Severino on regular rest, that's fine. But then in London, you're going to see Sean Manaea and Jose Quintana go up against the Phillies. Do not like Quintana against that Phillies lineup. So I'd prefer that it's Sevy and Manaea in that big series in London. That's going to be a series where a lot of runs could be scored. You want your best pitchers on the hill for that. I think Major League Baseball want the Mets' best pitchers for that. So we'll see what happens on Wednesday. But the more you think about it, you sort of talk it out. Christian Scott being shut down for any period of time is going to be frustrating for fans, and I get it. At the same time, if there was a point where you should shut him down, this is it. This is where the schedule allows you to remove him from the rotation with the least amount of impact. And hopefully the 5 guys you got can hold it down for some period of time here with maybe Jose Budo making some contributions. And then if it is July that he returns, you could have a rested, ready to go Christian Scott that can give you some great innings in July, August, and even into September. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I will be giving you a Sunday show as well, because I want to recap whatever happens in Saturday's game, as well as the Darryl Strawberry jersey retirement. And I'm working on an article for Just Baseball about which Mets jersey will be retired next. So we'll talk about that on the show as well. If you don't want to miss it, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to make a push to 9,000 subs, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out Locked On Sports Today to stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports.